The first time Caleb Holt saw her, she was standing at the edge of the dry creek bed, dust curling around her boots like smoke. The afternoon sun had gone coppery, low and sharp, turning the prairie into a wide, breathing thing. She didn't look lost, exactly, more like she had decided to stop running and was daring the world to make the next move. Caleb reined in his horse and studied her the way a man studies a storm cloud. He'd lived on the Holt ranch since before he could remember, had learned the shape of danger by how quiet the land went before it struck. The woman was quiet like that, still, watchful, eyes too steady for someone who meant no trouble. She wore a faded dress mended more times than he could count, the fabric pulled tight at the shoulders as if it had once belonged to someone else. A bruise, old but not forgotten, colored her jaw. Her hair was braided down her back, neat despite the dust, as though order was something she refused to surrender. "You lost?" Caleb asked, his voice easy, the way it got when he didn't want to spook anything. Her gaze flicked to his rifle, then back to his face. "No," she said. "I'm finished." That was an answer that didn't belong to the question. Caleb felt it land anyway. He dismounted slowly and held the reins loose. "Finished with what?" She didn't answer right away. The wind crossed the creek bed and carried the smell of sage. "Finally," she said, "with being chased. With pretending I'm something I'm not." Caleb nodded, as if she'd told him the weather. "Name's Caleb Holt. This is Holt land for 10 miles in any direction. If you're finished, you're welcome to finish here." She studied him again, harder this time. "You don't know what you're offering." He smiled faintly. "I know what I can spare." That earned him the first crack in her armor. A humorless curve of the mouth. "You'll regret choosing me." Caleb met her eyes. "I only regret waiting so long." She blinked, surprised. It was a small thing, but it felt like a gate swinging open somewhere. "My name's Mara," she said. "That's the truth, at least." "Truth's a good place to start," Caleb replied. "Come on. Supper's waiting." The Holt ranch sat on a rise that caught the last of the day's light. The house was broad and low, built by Caleb's father with hands that believed in straight lines and thick beams. A barn leaned against the wind like an old friend. There were horses in the corral and cattle in the far pasture, their dark shapes moving slow and certain. Mara walked with measured steps, eyes taking everything in. She didn't ask questions, didn't gape. When Caleb opened the door for her, she hesitated, as if crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Inside, the house smelled of coffee and clean wood. Mrs. Avery, the cook who'd been with the Holts since Caleb was a boy, looked up from the stove. She took in Mara's dust and bruises and said nothing about them. She only smiled and set another place at the table. "Sit," Mrs. Avery said, as if she were welcoming a neighbor. Mara sat stiffly at first, hands folded in her lap. As the meal went on, beans, cornbread, a slab of beef cooked just right, she relaxed by degrees. She ate like someone who knew hunger well, but she didn't rush. When Mrs. Avery poured her coffee, she said thank you and meant it. After supper, Caleb showed her the spare room. It was small, but the bed was clean and the window looked out toward the creek. "You can stay," he said. "No conditions." Mara set her bundle on the bed. "Nothing's free," she replied. "Then we'll call it an investment," Caleb said. "You help where you can. You rest when you need to." She turned to face him, her expression guarded. "If men come asking for me, I'll answer," Caleb said. "That's my job." That night, the prairie sang. Coyotes called to one another, and the house creaked as it settled. Mara lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to a place that didn't feel like it wanted to swallow her whole. She slept with one hand on the knife she kept under the pillow anyway. Days passed. Mara learned the rhythms of the ranch, and the ranch learned her. She rose early, helped Mrs. Avery, mended tack, and learned the names of the horses. She moved with purpose, but there was a carefulness to her, as if she were braced for a blow that hadn't landed yet. Caleb watched her from the corner of his eye. He noticed how she flinched at sudden noises, how she relaxed when she thought no one was looking. He noticed the way she listened, really listened. When he spoke about the land, about how his father had taught him to read the grass and the sky. "You talk like you're married to this place," Mara said once, as they walked the fence line. Caleb smiled. "Long courtship." She hesitated. "Does it ever get lonely?" He considered the question. "Sometimes. But loneliness isn't the same as being alone." She nodded, as if that settled something. One afternoon, a rider appeared at the far edge of the pasture. Caleb saw the dust first, then the man. He felt the land go quiet. The rider introduced himself as Amos Pike, his hat brim low, his eyes sharp. "Heard you took in a woman," he said, voice friendly in a way that wasn't. Caleb didn't move. "I take in folks all the time." Pike smiled thinly. "She answers to Mara?" Caleb met his gaze. "She answers to herself." The smile faded. "She belongs to a man named Reddick." Caleb felt something cold and steady settle in his chest. "No one belongs to anyone." Pike's eyes flicked toward the house. "Reddick don't see it that way." "Reddick can come talk to me," Caleb said. "Or he can keep his distance." Pike studied him a moment longer, then tipped his hat. "You've been warned." When the rider was gone, Mara stood in the doorway, her face pale. "I told you," she said softly. "You'll regret choosing me." Caleb shook his head. "I don't scare easy." She laughed then, a short, bitter sound. "You should." That night, Mara told him the rest. About Reddick, a man who collected people the way some men collected land, through pressure and lies. About how she'd learned too late that promises could be cages. About the night she'd run, taking nothing but her name and her knife. "I didn't steal," she said, as if the words had weight. "I didn't hurt anyone. I just left." Caleb listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said, "You did what you had to." She searched his face. "Why are you helping me?" He considered that too. "Because it's right," he said. "And because I want to." Mara looked away, the firelight catching in her eyes. "Wanting can be dangerous." "So can waiting," Caleb replied. Trouble didn't wait long. 2 days later, Reddick himself rode in with 3 men. They dismounted at the gate like they owned it. Reddick was tall and well-dressed, his smile practiced. "Mara," he called. "Come home." Caleb stepped between them. "She's not going anywhere." Reddick's gaze slid to Caleb, assessing. "You're a fool." "Maybe," Caleb said. "But I'm a stubborn one." The standoff felt like a held breath. Mara stood on the porch, her hands steady at her sides. "I'm not yours," she said. "I never was." Reddick's smile vanished. He nodded once, a decision made. "This isn't over." He left with his men, but the promise lingered like smoke. Caleb doubled the night watches. He checked the fences twice a day. The ranch became a place braced for impact. In the quiet moments, something else grew. A shared look across the table. A smile that lingered. The knowledge that they were choosing each other, every day, against the odds. One evening, as the sky burned red and gold, Mara stood beside Caleb on the rise. "If you send me away," she said, "I'll understand." Caleb took her hand, rough fingers gentle. "I'm not sending you anywhere." She swallowed. "You don't know what loving me will cost." He turned to face her fully. "I know what it's worth." The attack came at dawn. Reddick and his men tried to take the barn, thinking to draw Caleb out. They underestimated the land, and the people who knew it. Caleb moved like he was part of the ranch itself, anticipating, responding. Mrs. Avery got the horses loose. Mara stood her ground, her knife flashing once, twice, a quiet ferocity born of survival. When it was over, Reddick lay wounded and furious, his plans in ruins. The sheriff arrived late, but he listened. He listened to Mara. He listened to Caleb. He took Reddick away in irons. The ranch exhaled. In the days that followed, repairs were made. Fences were mended. Life settled back into its grooves. One night, under a sky thick with stars, Caleb asked Mara to stay, not as a guest, not as an obligation, but as a partner. She laughed and cried at the same time. "I warned you," she whispered. "You'll regret choosing me." Caleb smiled, the prairie wide and forgiving around them. "I only regret waiting so long." They built a life that didn't pretend the past hadn't happened. They honored it by moving forward anyway. And the land, patient and enduring, welcomed them both.